Hello everybody, welcome back to Comedian MTG. We have another top 4 breakdown of a great cEDH tournament for you, except the only difference this time is I'm in it. Yeah, this was Tier1-Con, one of several events being put on by Tier1 MTG, a store out of Denmark. Crazy tournament. I actually had to wake up at 3 in the morning to get ready for this tournament, so it was absolutely a really awesome time, and the fact that I was able to make the top 4 of this tournament is an awesome feeling, and I'm super pumped about it. But without any further ado, let's talk about the decks from this tournament, starting with mine. So the first list on here is obviously my Winota Joiner of Forces list. It has been a list obviously I've been working on for a very long time, but what finally pushed me over the edge was I have had multiple tournaments where I've thought about sleeving up Winota, and every single time the metagame has been absolutely perfect for Winota, and I just haven't done it. I've wanted to go with other lists, and whether it was a success or a failure at the time for those other lists, Winota felt like the perfect deck to bring to this tournament. I figured it was a new metagame, Turbonauts being so prolific in the meta that I had a feeling I would be able to take advantage of people being way too aggressive in these pods, and for a number of the pods in this tournament and a number of decks in the tournament, I was able to really capitalize on the advantage for that. Now this is a special version of my Winota list, just with a few edits. Now one thing to note, I will be linking my primer for Winota in the show notes down below. It will be a little different than the list I ran today. The only real difference is there was no Kaldheim legal at the time of this tournament, whereas my Winota primer has been updated for Kaldheim's legality. So instead of what you would normally see, which is Tybalt's Trickery in the list, I'm playing a Signal Pest instead, and that was just because I thought it was a new evasive creature and I wanted to try it out. Now big shout outs to a couple people in the Discord. One of the cards that absolutely carried me in this tournament and that I really was doubting for some time was actually Rick the Steadfast Leader. Now I know a lot of people feel that there's a lot of controversy around this card due to the Walking Dead Secret Lair printings. However, Rick absolutely is perfect for this deck. In cEDH we think about optimizing our decks, and that is the most important part of our deck building process here. So given that in mind, and given to the fact that we are just trying to play the most optimized decks possible, Rick is absolutely perfect for a Winota deck. It is almost trivial to turn on the humans get +2/+2 ability, and then either giving your humans Vigilance, First Strike, or Lifelink right off the bat is absolutely backbreaking. I have found every single game that Rick has come onto the battlefield, it has either dominated that game as far as combat wise, or absolutely won me games that I had no right to get my combos out in. Now before Rick was put in this deck, I often found that combat damage was not a viable way to win after I'd locked out the boards. I would often still have to go for my combos and would often find scenarios where I could get blown out doing one of my combos. But now if I'm in a grindy, attrition heavy game, I can actually tutor up Rick, give my creatures a giant boost, and be able to swing in for the win. Now to take a step back, for those of you not familiar with Winota herself, this deck was the first ever Boros deck put on the cEDH decklist database. A few months after Ikoria was released, I started working on Winota. It helped that the Conspicuous Snoop combos had come out and there were multiple ways to win through the deck. One of the biggest avenues for the win conditions of this deck is the fact that Winota often will flip over humans that enable Kiki Jiki combos. Some of the humans I'm talking about are cards like Village Bellringer, Zealous Conscripts, and Combat Celebrant. With any of these cards and a Kiki Jiki or a Splinter Twin, you're able to make infinite damage. And due to the fact that Winota also flips over a number of relevant humans like the Recruiters, Imperial Recruiter, and Recruiter of the Guard to be able to get your combo pieces, as well as pulling those combo humans off the top of your library, it allows for a very clean win in the Boros colors. So the game plan is to land some early non-human creatures that can trigger Winota, flipping over your humans and flipping over your combo pieces. Now to stop your opponents going off, these decks tend to be extremely Stax heavy, so slowing down the board with cards like Spirit of the Labyrinth, Eidolon of Rhetoric really allow you to be able to keep pace with your opponents and be able to slow them down so that they are playing your version of Fair Magic, and you can take down the table with cards like Rick or with Kiki Jiki and be able to actually swing out with Boros in the competitive EDH setting. Now the journey for me personally, going from Boros being considered unplayable playable, to being the first ever Boros deck on the cEDH deck list database that is actually a recognized Boros option for competitive EDH, to now being able to top 4 a tournament with it has made me so happy, and it is one of my proudest things for myself as a cEDH player and as a Magic player in whole. But enough about me, let's talk about the rest of the top 4. Another one of our top 4 players was legit vocals with Hulk of the East Weavers. Now this is actually a Kodama of the East Tree and Timna the Weaver partner deck. It is super interesting. Now I didn't get to see a lot of it in the finals, but I have the general idea because I know a couple people who've been working on different variants of this deck. The basic idea is you're definitely going for a lot of these Protean Hulk and Razaketh and Villain reanimation style lines. You have a lot of sacrifice outlets in the deck for things like Academy Rector. You also have the sacrifice outlets for things like your Protean Hulk, and it has the Disciple of the Vault and Malira and Lesser Masticore Hulk pile that will allow you to win the game. Now, one thing to note with this deck is that Kodama provides a wealth of value in the command zone. A lot of people are testing with Kodama, and it's one of those cards that I think is way more complicated than people originally realized. It is broken in many, many ways and really messes with stack interaction, kind of the way that Winoda does with her trigger. It basically makes people think about the game on a different axis, and because of that, Kodama has actually proven itself to be quite powerful, even if we can't find the correct shell for it yet. However, this deck looks very interesting, and the combination of Timna, an already powerful commander, with Kodama, a brand new powerhouse in cEDH, has really allowed this deck to be very strong. Now, just more on the general game plan of this deck. It is, as I mentioned, a deck that tries to get out these sack outlets, these Hulk pieces, but it also is running things like Null Rod, Deafening Silence, and things like that to really slow down your opponents while at the same time accruing value. So if you're playing against decks like Turbo Ad Nauseam, things like Deafening Silence and Null Rod are going to slow them down and basically make it so that the game is yours to win. Now, the name of this next deck in the top 4 is relatively self-explanatory: TNT Value Pile by Zekbu. Now, Zekbu was really nice when I got to play with him. I only got to play with him in the finals pod. The basic idea of this deck is that it is a very grindy Thrasios Tymna the Weaver mid-range deck. Now, this deck is playing all of the mid-range engines that we have in cEDH. It is playing Oko, it is playing Smothering Tithe, Sylvan Library, Training Grounds. It is playing Gilded Drake Kinnan, Priest of Titania, Fabro Elder, these things to generate a ton of value, while also playing cards like Spell Queller, Trigon Predator, and Linvala, Keeper of Silence. All cards meant to be a really strong value engines that are supposed to lead you over the top. Now, I didn't really expect to see a deck like this in the top pods, seeing as a lot of people thought that the Turbo Ad Nauseam decks just tend to go over decks like this. But given the fact that there were definitely a variety of decks today, and especially if you consider the fact that people are attacking these Turbo Ad Naus decks with slower Stax deck, a deck like this that is just a pile of mid-range value cards that is attempting to just crush your opponents under the weight of its value, it makes a lot of sense that a deck like this could go all the way to the top of the pods. Now, this type of deck is running Jace Wielder Mysteries and Thassa's Oracle to win the game, playing a ton of these mid-range engines and just really attempting to accrue as much value as possible, create as much mana as possible, and use the fact that Thrasios and Tymna are just broken commanders to get you to the end of that game. I mean, there are so many engine creatures in this deck. You have Hull Breacher, Spell Queller, Opposition Agent, Linvala, the Aven Mind Sensor, all cards meant to absolutely destroy your opponent with value. It makes sense how this deck was able to pull ahead. And for those of you that like a really grindy deck in our format, I would definitely check this list out. And as I mentioned, I'm going to have every single one of these lists down in the show notes below. And once again, with another Thrasios and Tymna partner pairing, we have our winner from today's event, Spleenface, going undefeated for the entire tournament. Spleen is playing his version of Thrasios Tymna Razakats. For those who don't know, Razakats gets its name from Razaketh the Foul-Blooded, a card meant to be reanimated really early in the game and then break parity with being able to sacrifice your mana dorks and things like that to be able to tutor aggressively and go for a win. Now, ironically, the cats part of the Razakats deck is no longer in the deck. A lot of people used to play Leonin Relic Warder and animate dead combos that would allow you to basically create an infinite life and death sacrifice loop that would kill your opponents. But since Thassa's Oracle's printing, it became a lot cleaner to just play that and consult and go from there with the Razaketh piles. Now, a lot of people might find that these decks are just a pile of mid-range value, and you would be right in saying so. In the final, Spleen just reanimated a Villas in one of his main phases and was able to just draw about 30 cards in that turn, and that's how he ended up winning the game. One thing to note about this specific variant of the Razakats list, he's actually running Collector Oof. Now, the really cool thing about Collector Oof in a Razakats list is that it can be sacrificed to Razaketh itself. You see, a lot of the time people won't play Collector Oof in a Razakats list or Null Rod or Stony Silence because of the fact that it shuts down your Lion's Eye Diamond. Lion's Eye Diamond is one of those cards that needs to be used to generate a lot of mana when you are doing Razaketh stuff from almost no mana. However, the way Oof works, because it is a creature and can be sacrificed to Razaketh, you can break parity on Oof and only get rid of Oof when you are about to actually win the game. I think with a lot of these ad nauseum decks in the format, I think Oof is a really good inclusion. And that's what really makes this deck special. Apart from that, there's a lot of mid-range value pieces, but the ability to get early reanimations onto the battlefield, to be a little bit slower than your ad nauseum opponents, but have extreme amounts of value, to be able to break through Stax decks and not just fold to something like a Deafening Silence. It's no wonder that this deck was able to get ahead in today's game. It is clean, it is powerful, and it is playing some of the best win cons in our format, being Thassa's Oracle and Demonic Consultation. Big shout out to Spleenface. He is a player I am always impressed with and one who continues to put up really good numbers in these tournaments, and it is no wonder seeing as his performance today was spectacular. Thank you for watching today's video. I'm so excited to have participated in the Tier1-Con tournament. Now, there are actually more of these tournaments coming along the way. Now, details are going to be released, but there's another one of these in February, March, and April. So look out for these tournaments. The people running the tournament reached out to me as far as promos and stuff like that, and they have been absolutely awesome to work with, and I'm really excited that these tournaments are happening and that there's something we get to look forward to in the future. I am so excited by any new opportunity to be able to play my favorite format, cEDH, and it is so fun, and I'm so glad to have been a part of this tournament and so proud that I was able to make it to this top 4. If you have any thoughts about the decks from today's top 4, throw them down in the show notes below. I would love to hear what you guys think. I would love to hear if you guys think certain decks should have made it to the top 4 of this event. I will throw down the list from the top 4 down below. Please hit me up in those comments, talk about this tournament. It was so much fun, and if you have any questions about the details for the next upcoming tournaments, I will try to get those down in the show notes below as well. I'll be posting the games that I played from this tournament all throughout this week, so please look out for those. It's going to be so much fun. If you want to support content like this, please check us out at patreon.com/comedianmtg. It allows for things like my brand new camera and my brand new computer. And if you want to see more stuff like this and you want to see me continually upgrading my tech, please check us out at patreon.com. And while you're here on YouTube, do not forget to hit like, subscribe, and hit that little bell icon, because that'll tell you exactly when new stuff comes out. And I'm happy to keep releasing content all for you guys. All right, everybody, have an amazing week. Bye.